Hey, hi everyone. Welcome to our webinar. We're going to talk about today's, you know, webinar about FCC, right? Trends to what? Smarter tech and tactics that matter, right? So it's going to be a fun conversation. I have my colleagues to share their insights and what they are seeing in the market. But before we get started, it will be, good to know, who all have joined us today. Where are you dialing in from? So. Yeah, sorry for that. So I think I kind of logged into the LinkedIn at the same time. So it's just kind of started kind of, showing me the video and the audio as well. But anyways, so please let us know where are you dialing in today. I'm from today not in my home base, but I'm in Colorado. So really, fun place talking a lot about process and, disputes management and investigations and case management. A lot of conversations happening at an event right now. So this is like really lively to have the conversation around, hey, what are we seeing in FCC? So let us, introduce the panel, but I would also love to know where you all are dialing from. So please let us know. So quick introduction, I'm Ronak. I'm a partner with Everest Group. I lead our financial services research. And I have my colleagues with me. I'll let them introduce one by one. So Dheeraj, you are first on my screen. So I'll start with you. Why don't you go ahead?
Thanks, Ronak. Hi, everyone. This is Dheeraj Markin, dialing in from Gurgaon. I'm practice director with the firm, currently leading the BFS BPS along with the Financial Crime and Compliance program. In Financial Crime and Compliance, I cover all things FCC, be it technology, operations, or advice. Glad to be here and looking forward to an engaging conversation with all of you. Over to you, Kriti.
Thanks, Dheeraj. Hey, everyone. Good morning, good evening. My name is Kriti Gupta. I'm a practice director at Everest Group. I lead our research on banking, financial services, technology, and technology products with a special focus on the FCC area. I'm dialing out of our India office based out of Gurgaon and looking forward to sharing some perspectives with all of you and answering any of your queries today. Rahul, do you want to go next?
Thanks, Kriti. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good evening. Rahul Mittal this side. I am working as a senior analyst with Everest Group with the BFSI team here. Special interest areas is financial crime and compliance operations and technology. So look forward to have a exciting, engaging conversation with you all.
Perfect. So Rahul, I'm going to start with you, right? My first question is, I think I want to ask this question to all of you first. So, we all have seen instances of financial crime, fraud, and we've heard some, very popular ones also out here in the industry. So Rahul, I want to start with you, right? What's been one fin crime incident that you saw, which was like, oh my God, this is something that is very interesting and you would want to share with us?
Yeah. So actually, Ronak, one which I would like to share, it's in public domain where the crypto frenzy was at a time one of its highest. So the one of my favorite cautionary tales is the FTX one. The crypto exchange that was supposedly worth 32 billion USD at a time until everyone realized that their financial governance was held together literally with duct tapes and dreams. So customer funds are allegedly shuffled into a sister hedge fund. Records were practically non-existing, and risk management was more of a suggestion than a function. So like if you see it from a fin crime lens, it was a textbook case of what happens when you skip the basics, like no segregation of funds, no independent audits, and even no compliance guardrails. And the implications, like as we all saw, there were massive investor losses, bankruptcy, and there was a ripple effect across the entire crypto industry. And of course, fraud charges, criminal trials, and a fresh wave of global regulatory scrutiny. So, in short, a reminder that if you don't invest in governance and controls, someone else might actually be investing your customers' money in a beach house somewhere.
I know that's so important, and in I think such a good example, right, to start with, in terms of governance, right? You kind of, used one of the pillars we want to talk about today, so that's great. Um, Dheeraj, how about you, right? What is your standout fin crime memory?
So you're taking cue from the beach house example. One of the most striking financial crime cases that really stuck with me involved a digital identity fraud scheme by a US-based education lending firm called Frank. Now, what this company did was it uh, it basically simplified and democratized financial aid for students. But what really happened was way far away from it. After GPMC acquired the firm for $175 million, it discovered that more than 4 million of Frank's user base were fake and were created using synthetic identities to inflate the user base and the valuation as well. So it's an example of what can go wrong when a digital identity fraud intersects with aggressive M&A due diligence gaps, right? JPMC ended up suing the founder after realizing the massive deception post the acquisition. So for me, this particular case exemplifies the new frontiers of fraud, right? How innovation can be exploited, how institutional trust can be manipulated at scale, and also how critical, robust digital identity verification, risk due diligence are in today's compliance landscape.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Dheeraj, for sharing this. I think this has been in the news for a while, and I think it's a reminder, right? The largest of the financial services firms may also kind of fall trap to, right? So it's not just people like us who have had, several attempts at fraud and some successful ones. It could also be large organizations who can, feel that pain. So, again, thank you for sharing that. And talking about personal pains and challenges that comes with, some of these frauds. Kriti, I think you also have a story with for us, right? So why don't you go next?
Yes, definitely, Ronak. And like you said, it's deeply personal. So it happened with me a couple of months back, and it was a regular day for me. I had the school pickup duty for my 4.5-year-old. Around afternoon time, I was at the school and I was consistently getting this call from an unknown number. I generally do not pick up such calls, but it seemed to be quite urgent. And when I picked it up, the person on the other end sounded so official, so formal, using all the right tonality and the words with me. They had my last residential address. They claimed to be calling from the local court, summoning me the next month because I had received some amount of money into my account, which was from another illicit organization. And they threatened me with police action, some kind of a legal action. And they had the last four digits of my bank account as well, right? And that's when I completely, I think, panicked. Kind of like a digital arrest situation. And imagine I have a hungry kid at one end who has just finished 5 hours of school. And at the other end, I have someone on the phone telling me that, hey, you need to come down to the court next month. There's some legal action pending. Uh, After a few minutes, I just broke out of that trance. I disconnected the call. And the moment I came home, I think I was in a state of panic for a couple of minutes. But then I just opened my laptop because I was scared to use my mobile banking app, the banking app I had been using for so many years. I opened my net banking. I transferred the amount I had in my current account, right? And that's the kind of, I would say, scare tactic that happens. We tend to think these financial crime activities are at a corporate level or I'd say something in a world far removed from us.
Yeah.
But we can also fall prey as day-to-day users, right? And I think that was sort of like a wake-up call. It can happen to anyone.
Yeah. And Kriti, and I think that is what is scary about all of this, right? With the sophistication of AI and other technologies, it's not just banks and all of us have better tools to protect us, but the attackers also have better tools, right? And that is where if somebody says, "Oh, I have done everything possible to protect myself from financial crime, compliance, and everything that comes along from anti-money laundering to smaller check frauds and all of those things," you can never say I've done it all, right? Every organization is on its toes to kind of drive business resiliency and kind of get to a level where they can stay competitive, right? In terms of vis-a-vis the attackers, right? Vis-a-vis the fraudsters. So this is a never-ending race. This is where you need to continue to invest, and I think that's what we want to talk about, right? So we want to talk about the major trends in financial crime and compliance today. We want to definitely go deeper into what are the technology themes. We have exciting research coming out, so definitely want to hear about that, right? So the upcoming leading 50 report, right, which is kind of listing the 50 technology providers, the Innovation Watch report, which is about generative AI and financial crime and compliance. I know, Rahul, you want to talk about all of those later. And then the digital identity report, right? I think that has been a fantastic piece of report. We've got some amazing feedback from the market and from our banking clients in terms of how they see this evolving space. So again, thank you for all the great work out here, and I'm sure we're going to have a great conversation, bringing some of our research out here. And all of you who are joining us, again, thank you for joining us. And again, Angela, thank you for joining us from Cincinnati, Ohio. Really appreciate you being with us. So we want to get started. And Kriti, I'm going to come back right at you, right? So you shared a personal story. So I want to start with you. Can you elaborate, right? What are some of the critical challenges you see financial institutions are grappling with when it comes to financial crime and compliance?
Sure, Ronak, and I'm happy to share my thoughts. I think one interesting thing we need to see in this ever-changing world in the financial crime and compliance space is how financial crime and compliance management has traditionally happened at these financial services enterprises, right? So starting from these manual checks, your siloed systems, separate systems of KYC, AML, which sort of are a barrier to build a unified risk profile, thinking of compliance at a regional level versus a global level, a lot of these being very human-led systems, less of ecosystem collaboration. And I think it worked, right? It worked for multiple of these years. But looking at the sophistication of these financial crime attacks that are happening today, and all of us shared some stories, and I know people who are listening to us, you have your own set of stories, right? It translates into these trifecta of people, process, and technology challenge that grip these enterprises today, right? So from a people perspective, we definitely see there's a talent shortage of the skilled compliance professionals that are coming in. There's this need to train, retrain people. How do they keep up with these evolving threats, right? Because fraudsters do not stop. Every day you have a new scam out there. How can enterprises protect themselves? At the same time, there is a huge resource constraint. So how do you then solve for the people challenge? And all of it also translates into the process bit, right? How things have traditionally happened versus how they need to happen. So if you look at it, the amount of regulations that enterprises need to keep track of, they are increasing day by day. The regulatory complexity is so huge. There are these data silos that are not even helping, the processes that are still manual. And lastly, I think we can't ignore the tech in all of it, right? The role of technology. So the systems that have been siloed are facing challenges of integrating with these disparate tools, running AI on top of it. So we talk a lot about fraud detection via AI, but how do you do that when you have these underlying legacy systems, right? How do you then tackle the cyber threats? So all of it, I would say, people, process, technology, threats, and the challenges are quite big that financial services enterprises need to solve for.
Yeah, I think this is very well laid out in terms of the challenges. And I kind of agree, right? The people, process, tech. And I would also add data to it because we do face that also as a big challenge as we see the overall debt that organizations have built, right? When it comes to just managing all of that. So definitely. And I know we have more folks joining us. So thank you, for joining us. And if you have any questions, feel free to put that in the chat. We would definitely want to take this as we go along. But as Kriti, you mentioned about these challenges, right? Dheeraj, I want to ask to you, right? So we now understand these challenges, but given we want to talk about technology and services, what are the strategic priorities and the areas where financial institutions are now planning to spend when it comes to financial crime and compliance?
Thanks, Ronak. Uh, what's clear from our conversations with clients and based on Everest Group's ongoing research is that financial institutions aren't just spending more, they are spending more strategically when it comes to financial crime and compliance. Globally, financial crime and compliance tech outsourcing spend is expected to reach $25 billion by 2025. That tells us just how serious banks are about modernizing their entire compliance infrastructure. So we are seeing three clear spending and strategic priority areas which are emerging, right? The first one being technology modernization. Now, institutions need integrated compliance platforms platforms that can scale, platforms that can offer real-time analytics, and platforms that can adapt quickly to new regulatory demands. They are also doubling down on AI and machine learning to tackle areas such as false positives, which can be as high as 95% in many of the cases. They also are automating repetitive tasks like alert triage, downstream documentation processes. We are also seeing a strong uptick in the investment in digital identity and FRAML platforms. FRAML is basically combining fraud and anti-money laundering capabilities into a single ecosystem, providing a unified. The second strategic priority is operational rebalancing. Operationally, institutions are shifting towards hybrid delivery models. That means high value advisory regulatory engagements are staying onshore, while executional tasks like KYC processing, first line of defense, transaction monitoring, sanction screening, these are the areas which are moving offshore. Um, Again, offshore markets such as India, Philippines, Poland would remain strategic priority, and hence they are seeing stronger growth in this space due to skilled talent pool, um, um, language availability, cost efficiency, right? Um, so they are scaling flexibly and also automating intelligently to get their operations rebalanced and have that cost and compliance in check. The third one would be around governance, risk, and compliance, because that is now being repositioned from a back office burden to a strategic control function. Right? Institutions are aligning their GRCs more closely with business strategy, enterprise risk, BCM, and also ESG compliance. Meanwhile, advisory spend is rising as firms are seeking support on interpretation of the regulatory changes, digital transformation, adopting newer technology, especially with emerging areas such as crypto, digital assets, Gen AI, agentic AI, cross-border data sharing, etc. So it isn't limited to doing more. It's about doing it smarter, faster, and in a way that is sustainable, both from a cost as well as a compliance perspective.
So that's, I think, Dheeraj, this is really interesting, right? So there is, regulatory, changes and challenges and other pieces that folks need to do. There's a constant piece of evolution in terms of the nature of transactions, the channels, and how that is evolving. And then also applying a lot more advanced technology so that you can remove the manual work and the sophistication of attacker that we already spoke about, right? All of them kind of creating a heady mix in terms of shaping the financial crime and compliance landscape. So this is interesting, right? And again, thank you for sharing this in detail and also kind of highlighting that this is a fast growing area, right? There is a lot of spend happening and it is going to continue to grow as per your estimates and your research. So Rahul, I wanted to come to you, right? Given all of these, right, because we've talked about the challenges that the enterprises face, how the market is shaping up into the strategic priority, and all of this coming together. How do you see the total spend, right, evolving as we can you break this down for us in terms of where is this spend going to be, how the outsourcing is going to shape up as we are thinking about financial crime and compliance?
Sure, absolutely. So, Ronak, as what we are seeing is that the sheer complexity and the intensity of compliance demands today are fundamentally reshaping the entire FCC services and technology market, which is in a way driving the strong growth in outsourcing. Now, to break it down, like let's first talk about the scale. Like now we see compliance is no longer a back office function, but more a boardroom priority. And the cost of non-compliance is rising while the pace of regulatory change is accelerating. And even if you see the financial criminals are becoming more sophisticated. As a result, FIs are now doubling down on their investments and increasingly looking at external partners to help keep them with the pace. Now, if you see, this has expanded the outsourcing opportunity significantly with demand growing across banks of all sizes, particularly in areas like transaction monitoring, KYC, fraud detection, sanction screening, and even regulatory reporting. Now, in terms of how institutions are outsourcing, some of the few key trends which are shaping this landscape. So, first being like we are seeing a clear shift from a traditional staff augmentation model towards a more outcome based and platform enabled engagements. So, like banks now just don't want a headcount, they want faster investigations. How can they
Yeah.
lower their false positives and seamless compliance workflows? That's leading to a rise in managed services, automation
Mhm.
first models, and AI augmented delivery. Second, what we see is the location strategy being evolving. Like offshore and nearshore delivery continues to grow, especially for standardized high volume tasks like document review or alert disposition. At the same time, certain functions such as regulatory advisory, EDD, are staying onshore, leading to a more hybrid global delivery mix. Thirdly, what we are seeing is the growing role of, you see, tech-powered outsourcing. Many institutions are now partnering with providers who not only operate compliance process, but also bring in the technology to digitize and optimize them. These may include things like embedded analytics, case management platforms, and identity verification tools. So compliance is not just executed, but it's ongoing or continuously improved. And finally, the ecosystem collaboration is becoming a differentiator. Providers are increasingly forming strategic partnerships with hyperscalers, fintechs, regtech players to deliver a modular and an interoperable solution that can evolve with the client need. So overall, the challenges are fueling a market that's growing not just in volume, but even in sophistication.
Got it. Now that's helpful. And again, I think the way you described it, it's, and again, I think I go back to the Kriti's point, right? The people, process, technology, data. And I think the people become very critical. And it's also about where the skills is, how are you using them, and how are you driving that. And then one question I do have, again, Dheeraj, maybe you may want to kind of, further elaborate, is the dynamics of how can you use the global delivery model, because now with technology advancement, I think there is a better chance to use talent that is available globally to kind of deliver these financial crime and compliance services. So how are you seeing that shape up?
Absolutely, Your Honor. What we are seeing today is clear shift in how institutions are balancing their FCC delivery models across onshore and offshore locations. Right. Historically, a lot of financial crime and compliance work, particularly the sensitive ones, such as AML investigations or regulatory reporting, these were kept strictly onshore due to concerns around data privacy, regulatory scrutiny, and also perceived complexity. But that's something which we are seeing is changing. The FIs are now opening up to bringing in a lot of these processes and sub processes to um, offshore locations as well, either as part of opening up newer GCCs or also as part of completely offshoring it to or basically outsourcing it to another service provider, right? Um, now, right now, what we are seeing is although within this particular industry vertical, you would see the penetration, outsourcing penetration is somewhere between 15 to 25%, right? When you compare it with other verticals, the penetration is much higher there. So there is definitely a lot of white spaces to be covered here, and immense opportunity in terms of outsourcing more work, having much more control, and also um, having a much robust ecosystem in place, right? Making sure they are aware of, they are basically taking help from the experience of the service providers to have much better outcomes, which they have had traditionally, right? So the offshore and nearshore segments both are seeing strong momentum, especially in countries like India, Poland, Philippines. Recently, we are also seeing in many parts of Latin America. right? There are a few reasons for this. First being cost pressure, right? With inflations, rising wages, macroeconomic conditions, institutions are actively seeking cost-efficient ways to scale their operations. Second one would be talent availability. Offshore hubs offer large skilled pools of compliance professionals, certified professionals, right? And are investing in domain specific training, certifications, etc. So the talent availability is immense if you look at offshore locations. The third would be tech enablement. In terms of tech maturity, these service providers have come a long way. So, if you think about cloud adoption, secure data channels, usage of AI tools, and also mitigating previously happened issues or concerns related to remote compliance execution, this is something which have been done, and have created robust frameworks to tackle all of these things related to tech enablement. So we are seeing, as a result of all of these growth vectors, we are seeing an accelerated growth in offshoring of transactional tasks such as KYC processing, transaction monitoring, name screening, adverse media screening, fraud detection, even fraud investigations, right? Uh, and certain high touch, high complexity activities, you would still find them onshore. These could be your regulatory engagements, interpretation of regional laws, um, the final SAR filing in some of the sensitive jurisdictions, and then also the advisory functions or remediation functions. Although remediations, a lot of them are being offshored as well, but the initial step starts with the nearshore or onshore counterparts, and then it goes the downstream, trickle back down to the offshore locations.
Got it. Makes sense. Makes sense. No, I think this is interesting, right? Because there is a talent model or a talent pool that is developing, which is trained, certified with the right domain context across locations that folks can tap into, and then also create this in a much more cost-effective manner, right? So I think that's a very powerful piece because the volumes are scaling, the complexity is scaling, and you need more people and technology both at the same time to kind of address this. And Dheeraj, I do want to kind of get a little bit more view, I think, both from you and Kriti in terms of the advisory services and tech services, right? How are you seeing the growth specifically for those two themes as you look at financial crime and compliance?
Sure, Ronak, I can give my perspective first, and then maybe Kriti, you can add on. So, both from a tech as well as advisory standpoint, there are several strong growth vectors which we are seeing, which are actually shaping the FCC landscape right now. Without a doubt, fastest growing area is the adoption of AI and machine learning, because wherever we go, in all the boardrooms across the board, AI is talked about 90% of the time. It takes your 90% of bandwidth, right? Particularly in areas within FCC, such as reducing false positives in transaction monitoring, automating alert triages, automating a lot of your investigation workflows, whether it is related to entity resolution or whether it is related to your fraud related investigations. Also enhancing customer risk profiling, bringing in continuous or perpetual KYC into the mix, right? Because with a lot of changes coming into the picture, with event-driven reviews coming into the picture, continuous or perpetual core KYC, which comes with uh, inclusion of technology as well as advisory, is something which is imperative, right? Another big growth vector would be digital identity, right? With the rise of synthetic frauds, with the rise of these gambling platforms, with the rise of these quick KYC or eKYC mandates, right? Where you would want users to be onboarded onto your platform within minutes or even within few seconds, right? So digital identity providers uh, would definitely be a, a big part of this growth story. Another area which we are tracking, uh, and we would also be coming up with dedicated research on, would be the rise of FRAML platforms, right? Fraud again is an area which is organically followed by that money which has been taken up to be laundered. So fraud plus money laundering is something which we are tracking closely, and having a unified view or integrating these into a single solution stack. We are calling it FRAML, but then a lot of other providers are doing it as unified fraud and AML platforms as well. So bringing that as single solution stack or convergence of these different risks, these different data, and the bringing the outcome of a faster response across both of these domains is something which would also be a big growth vector. So we are also seeing growth in terms of biometric verification, eKYC onboarding, AI-driven authentication, right? Especially in response to a lot of these synthetic identity frauds, deep fake threats, ultimate beneficial ownerships, etc. So yeah, these are the ones which we are tracking from a tech and advisory perspective.
Quite a long list, quite a long list. Yeah, thank you. Kirti, you wanted to add something, right? Go ahead.
Yeah. I also want to add to it because as I hear these themes out, I also want to take a couple of steps back, because while we have touched upon the data process, people aspect of it, I think it's also equally important to understand how banking and financial services enterprises have traditionally looked at third-party platforms in the space, right? Which is the underlying tech that runs all of these processes and streamlines all of that data, right? And as I mentioned earlier, the siloed data sets, the siloed systems, a lot of it is changing today, because to keep up these regulations, the new provisions that come in, how do you adopt AI at scale, right? A lot of it also boils down to the entire modernization wave that has happened across these banking financial services enterprises. So how your core banking, core payments, core lending systems, where all these transactions are flowing in, they have modernized, they moved to the cloud in some cases. So we see the ecosystem coming together and helping these enterprises come up to speed in a very digitally enabled FCC world. So we are seeing multiple dynamics in this, right? At one end, you have these FCC tech providers. Some of them are providers who have end-to-end capabilities, who cover the entire aspect of different things like KYC, AML, transaction monitoring, and others. And then we are seeing enterprises also source for some of these tech providers in different point solutions or parts or specialists in these areas. And at the same time, I think the hyperscalers' role cannot really be ignored in all of it, because we are seeing so many of these hyperscalers going all out with their compliance platforms. So you're seeing an infrastructure that is available for banking financial services to deploy this tech, which streamlines all the data and process maps, which makes it very easy to bring all of the people, process, and technology challenges and provide solutions. So I think the underlying tech maturity has increased, and so has the banking financial services, I would say, propensity to adopt this tech. I just wanted to add that piece, Ronak.
I think that's a fantastic point, right? Because it is the entire stack, right? From infrastructure to the core technologies to the process, the data, AI layer, and then the people, and all coming together to kind of deliver on those process outcomes becomes very critical. And how do you then bring this all together, right? From a strategy consulting perspective, I think is all kind of tying it together is very important. And it definitely takes a village, right? It's the ecosystem that comes together to kind of drive this outcome. And we've been doing a lot of research on this ecosystem, right? Be it generative AI and its use in financial crime and compliance, and how the ecosystem is shaping, to who are the leading 50 technology providers in financial crime and compliance, or deep dive in areas like digital identity, right? So I wanted to, definitely hear about all of these research, and because I'm sure folks who have joined us on the LinkedIn Live today, but also the ones who will, watch this offline, I think this is one segment they are waiting for, right? So Rahul, start with you, right? Can you share, about our key research areas? What all have, the team been working on, and what should the audience look forward to?
Sure, Ronak. So we have been working on three reports here in this field, as you mentioned, about digital identity, Innovation Watch, which takes care of use cases of generative AI, and which are the leading 50 tech providers from an overall FCC space. So the first report, which has been published, and I would like to talk about, is the digital identity solutions. So in today's digitally connected world, the identity is no longer a backend utility, but it has become a frontline defense against financial crime and compliance, and the critical enabler for regulatory compliance. As a lot of my panelists mentioned, that with a sharp rise in identity fraud, account takeovers, and increasingly stringent KYC and privacy regulations, banks are being forced to reimagine how they verify and protect identities. So this report from Everest Group traces the evolution of digital identity, moving into scalable biometric-enabled platforms, and now entering a new phase of AI-powered, decentralized, and a privacy-first identity architectures. So this report, it explores how technologies like behavioral biometrics, blockchain, self-sovereign identity are shaping the future. And what makes this report particularly valuable is how it connects digital identity to tangible FCC outcomes. So it explains how smart identity infrastructure directly impacts KYC speed and accuracy, AML monitoring efficiency, fraud prevention, and an overall customer experience. And this report also breaks down the global market landscape by provider type, region, and helping institutions identify which digital identity capabilities and partners are best aligned to their overall strategic goals. Whether you are a bank struggling with onboarding friction or a tech provider building future ready compliance stack, this report offers a comprehensive roadmap for using digital identity. The next one, which got published yesterday, which is the Innovation Watch. So here, what we are talking about is like generative AI is creating a wave of disruption and opportunity across the FCC landscape. And as compliance team face alert fatigue, manual investigations, and mounting regulatory expectations, Gen AI is emerging as a force multiplier that can automate routine work, surface insights faster, and improve accuracy. So this particular report goes beyond the hype and gets practical. It walks through real Gen AI use cases across the FCC value chain, from KYC and screening to fraud monitoring and chargeback disputes. It also shows how institutions are already using Gen AI to generate SARs automatically, summarize transaction histories, resolve entity identities, and assist investigators with real-time co-pilot. So what's particularly useful in Everest Group's use case prioritization model is that it highlights which Gen AI applications are seeing the fastest enterprise adoption and which one requires more exploration. And here we have assessed 12 providers, evaluating them on maturity, scale, sister partnerships, and LLM strategies. For enterprises, if you talk about, this is a powerful guide to where Gen AI can deliver the most impact now. And for providers, it's a signal of where the market is heading and where investment and innovation are most urgently needed. Uh, and the third report, which would be out by next week, is the leading 50 FinCrime technology providers 2025. So what makes this report especially valuable is its objective and data-backed approach, where providers are ranked not by opinion, but a composite score across four strategic dimensions. Uh, and also the report goes beyond vendor ranking. It explores emerging hotspots of innovation, include AIML led transaction monitoring, PKYC, and as Dheeraj mentioned, convergence of fraud and AML into a unified FRAML platform. Also, crucially, the report recognizes that no vendor in today's time operates in isolation, and many of these leading tech providers are building high impact ecosystems by partnering with hyperscalers for scale, security, and agility. And at the same time, system integrators are playing a vital role in stitching together a story or a best of breed FCC solutions into a cohesive, compliant environment. So, whether you are a financial institution identifying your next gen compliance stack or a service provider evaluating ecosystem partnerships, the leading 50 report serves as a strategic playbook. So, excited to have this into the market very soon.
Yeah, no, really exciting stuff. And again, do want to congratulate all the technology providers that are featured on the Innovation Watch assessment, our digital identity report, and the leading 50 report that is upcoming. So this gives anybody who's looking at making technology decisions and looking at suppliers who bring the innovation and capabilities for their specific use cases and challenges, it's all out here. So I do have an offer for all our attendees today. We do want to, share a complimentary abstract from one of these reports. So, do reach out to us. There's a link that our team will also put it in the chat. So you could click on the link and can, request a download of any of these reports. There's a lot of exciting analysis in terms of AI, generative AI, and financial crime and compliance, but a lot more beyond that. So I'm really excited, how this is all shaped up and how the ecosystem is kind of coming together. And do want to thank all the participants. Right, I know there's a lot of effort that goes on their end to provide us the data to do an objective assessment. So thank you everyone, and again, Rahul, Dheeraj, Kriti, and your entire teams. Right, again, fantastic work on bringing this all along. I'm sure this is going to be valuable resources for our members. So to our audience, if you have more questions for us, feel free to share those in the chat. We would want to take questions and answer those as we go along. You also have the option to download the complimentary abstract of the report out here as well. So, I know, Kriti, you had a question, right?
Yeah, Ronak, I've been thinking, right, and I know Rahul talked a bit about our research and how we have been tracking the technology provider ecosystem in this space. And I'm just looking at it from a financial services perspective, right? Financial institution perspective. If I'm a banking and financial services institution, to me, I want to modernize my entire or digitize my entire FCC landscape, right? How my data and processes currently run. So I want to have like an integrated view and looking at how we have seen the history and where we are today from data, siloed systems, very human-led systems, broken processes to going to a very AI-ready kind of a world. What would you say be the next step or the next frontier for these enterprises as they try to connect all these dots and bring all of it together?
Yeah, no, I think, Kriti, that's a good question and ties into a lot of work that we've been doing around systems of action as well. So if you think about, right, most of our technology, right, be it systems of record, systems of engagement, systems of insight, they have the ability to build dashboards, right? They have the ability to get us the intelligence. But a lot of time, what happens is a lot of this intelligence becomes inert. We are not able to take actions on it, right? And I think that is what we believe is the gap between this intelligence to execution. And we need systems that are capable of executing on those intelligence, but at the same time agents, right, both human and AI agents that are able to use those systems, right? So the combination of these agents and the combination of these systems is what we're calling a systems of action coming together, right? And this is a very process conversation, right? Dheeraj mentioned so many different processes out there, and I think that is how we need to look at it. For every process, simply put, you have some inputs and a goal for the process and output. What you want is a system that is able to kind of mimic that, right? A system that is able to take the inputs, understand the goal, and get a certain set of actions completed and give us the output that we are looking for. What do you need for that, right? You need to activate the data because you have data that needs to get activated in the context of the process and the actions that need to be taken. You definitely need decisioning intelligence because there's so much of context. So you need to be able to understand what are the different steps, what are the decision flows, and what are the iterative loops, and all of that combined together what are the points where I need decisions to be taken, and the intelligence around that. And then definitely I need process orchestration, right? I need to orchestrate the whole process because it's not a linear path, right? It's a complex workflow, right? There are so many different steps, so many different pieces, and you don't touch all the steps every time, right? So it depends on the type of fraud, the type of product, the type of compliance needed, and all of those will dictate in terms of how the flow works. And then last but not the least, it needs to be secured, and it has to govern really well so that we are taking the right actions, right? We don't want a high amount of false positives or the other way around, right? So we want to manage everything. So that is where this is an iterative approach to get the data, process, technology, talent right, so that we can create systems that are capable of executing on the intelligence at speed, at scale, with the right compliance mandate, and have the right mix of agents, right? Both human and AI agents that can use these systems in harmony to kind of drive significant productivity. So the combination of two that becomes very important. And Dheeraj, I do want to ask you, right? Because as you hear me talk about systems of action, I'm sure you are now starting to think about financial crime and compliance, right? Can you give us an example, or how do you think it would apply here?
Great question. Actually, it what I and what based on my discussions with a lot of FCC practitioners as well as FIs, what I have understood is that it's quite significant, especially um, in terms of FCC, because it really gets to the heart of where the compliance transformation is headed, right? So they are solving the core challenge institutions have been struggling with for years, right? That is fragmented processes and complex regulatory changes, right? If I take example of a simple KYC process, right, wherein the financial institution or say a bank has to make sure that the entities who have an account with the bank, the bank has the valid document of that entity. If that particular entity has changed location or moved to a newer country, they should have the newer identity of that person. If that person, say for example, has moved to India, and now in India that person has become a member of a parliament, so they also need to make sure that that person's name comes out in the politically exposed persons list, or a PEP scan should give a hit for that particular person, right? So it's a very simplified KYC process, which I'm telling you. There could be multiple other complexities as well, right? Now, in a simple workflow, you can automate it in terms of putting a self-service where the customer uploads their KYC documents and it gets approved, and it's done and dusted, right? But in a complex scenario, you need to have each and every step to be done, each and every check to be done on a periodic basis, right? And you have to also uh, go ahead, connect to different databases of different countries having different APIs based on what the demand of that particular case or that particular KYC scenario is, right? With a linear process, you might not even require systems of action. You can do it by simply using RPA, right? But when the process becomes iterative, and also the iterations are not defined, iterations also keep on changing. There could be scenarios when there is a mandate that a particular company acquires another firm, and you have to do a re-KYC for all of the employees within that firm, right? So think of it, how much of uh, volume of agents you would require at that point in time, right? But then when you say, for example, have a systems of action in place where you do have a KYC agent, plus you also have um, an orchestrator layer who is able to pick up different KYC agents and is able to deploy them based on the need for scale, right? Because there is a volume spike. Think of it how transformative that can be. And at that point in time, Currently, the status quo is that in case of such mandate, the bank basically goes for an RFP and looks for vendors who are able to provide that scalability and who are able to say provide 100, 200 agents to them, and then for the provider also getting those agents, training them, making them on the job, ready for the job, is again a Herculean task, right? And it might take anywhere between a month to 3 months. Now with systems of action, you can do that. You can do those configurations. That orchestrator in itself would be able to deploy more agents based on the demand, right? So this was a very simplified case of KYC within FCC, but then there are multiple areas which are much more complex, such as transaction monitoring, anti-money laundering areas, right? And with the virtual assets, digital currency, crypto. Um, so the use cases are immense.
Yeah. So the need to be able to think, reason, and kind of bring actions quickly in the context of these processes and compliance mandate, I think, is becoming very critical. And how do you then kind of align to that, right? And that's where systems of action comes in, right? So this is more for the complex area. So okay, Dheeraj, I think it helps me also kind of think of a lot more examples, and I'm sure as we do more research and kind of publish a lot of reports on this, we will kind of outline this further.
Definitely.
Yeah. So and as I think about it, right, and Dheeraj, one thing that I was looking at it is the overall technology ecosystem, right? When it comes to financial crime and compliance, I see this to be highly diverse, right? It is so many different, and we've been talking about the ecosystem so much, right? And we talked about in the context of systems of action, right? So the data activation, the platform to drive the process orchestration, and the decision intelligence, the entire layer of professional services that we talked about, right? You and Kriti talked about consulting, advisory services, system integration, implementing of these new systems and AI, and then definitely the operators, right? The ones who execute, who bring a lot of capabilities, people that are trained, right? So be it the customer experience providers, the business process outsourcing service providers, they all are bringing much deeper capability, right? In terms of managing each customer interaction, right? Making sure each case is managed really well, SARs are being filed, looking at the processes, streamlining them, working on process re-engineering and all of that work. So I think the execution layer becomes very critical, the enablement layer of all our professional services firms, bringing the solutions, data, capabilities from the hyperscalers to the data providers to the process orchestration providers, and bringing them together, and all of these technology companies that are coming in together, and then definitely the data layer that we spoke about, and Kriti and Rahul, you both spoke about this, right? Which is, hey, there is a lot of external data that you need, and again, I think Dheeraj, you gave example of screening, risk assessment, fraud detection. So you need a lot more real time a flow of information, and then obviously AI driven tools to automate ingestion, analysis, and reasoning, and putting it into the context of process that we are doing. So the vast expanding ecosystem. We are at the forefront of tracking this as Everest Group. So I think all our listeners today live with us, but also the ones who will watch us later, feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Would love to kind of engage and kind of answer more questions. So as we are about to close, I just thought let me just take like a last 30-second reaction from all of you. So just wanted to see any closing remarks that all of you have for us in terms of financial crime and compliance, or any call to action that you all have, would love to kind of hear. So would go one by one, right? I don't know, Dheeraj, do you want to go first, right? Again, what's the big call to action for all our listeners when it comes to financial crime compliance?
Yeah, so I think a bigger one of the call to actions for our listeners when it comes to financial crime and compliance is financial crime and compliance is what we are seeing is that the financial institutions now are shifting from a reactive risk management to a proactive resilience, right? And whoever is working on this aspect of financial crime and compliance, whether it is around fraud, identity management, regulatory scrutiny, sanctions screening, right? That would be a game changer.
Got it? So reactive to proactive is your message, and how do you kind of drive that? Okay. Kritik, what do you want to say?
Yeah. Yeah, I think one thing I want to share with the audience today is we're increasingly seeing the kind of funds financial services enterprises have been keeping aside for penalties and fines. They're trying to channel it more into the strategic initiatives. And I think this leads to the question of how, what, when, how do they utilize those funds? So, how can the ecosystem come together to be more proactive, as Dheeraj said, rather than being reactive. So I think that's one key call to action I just want to call out. So we need to be working with the ecosystem together, and how can we fight financial crime together?
So proactive ecosystem. Rahul, what do you want to add?
My key takeaway for the listeners would be that financial FCC is no longer just about checking the boxes. It's about your building your resilience, driving efficiency, and staying one step ahead of increasingly sophisticated threats. And the innovations which we have explored today, from digital identity to Gen AI to the evolving tech landscape, they aren't just trends, they are the imperatives. So I think people should start asking questions that are we modernizing or maintaining? Are we automating the tasks? Or are we building a compliance that's truly it's is that I mean it's that's not reactive but truly resilient.
Got it. So moving from check the box to making it a strategic advantage, working with the ecosystem and being proactive. So that's what I took away. But thank you, all three of you, for this wonderful conversation. I really enjoyed it and I learned a lot. And I'm sure our listeners get a lot of value from engaging with us. And again, you have the complimentary abstract report that you can download using the link in the chat. If you have any questions, please put those in the chat. But you also know how to reach out to us. So we are your friendly FCC analysts. We didn't want to scare you about fraud, compliance, and all those things. I know this is a heavy topic to talk about, but hope we kind of give you enough to kind of chew on. And then there's a lot of good research coming up. So watch out for this space. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you,
Thank you
everyone.
all.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.